My mother called me for the first time in 4 years on the same week Forbes put my name next to the word millionaire. I stared at her contact photo, a picture from my college graduation, the only one she'd ever taken of me, and let it ring 3 times before I answered. "Marin, sweetheart," she said, like no time had passed at all, like the silence between us hadn't lasted longer than some marriages. "I saw the article. I'm so proud of you. We should catch up." I sat there in my office, 40 floors above the city I'd built half of, and I felt something crack open in my chest that I thought had scarred over years ago. 4 years of nothing. 4 years of birthdays with no card, a father's funeral I'd paid for alone, a sister's wedding I wasn't invited to. And now 1 magazine article, and I was sweetheart again. "Sure, Mom," I said. "Let's catch up." I already knew what this was. I just didn't know yet how far they'd go to get it. My name is Marin Ashford. I'm 38 years old, and I'm an architect. I run a firm that restores historic buildings and turns them into something worth saving. It took me 16 years, 3 bankruptcies I never told my family about, and more nights sleeping on a fold-out couch in my own office than I care to remember. Growing up in Millbrook, Ohio, I was the daughter nobody photographed. My younger sister Dana was the pretty one, the easy one, the one my mother, Colleen, actually looked at when she spoke. I was the difficult one, the one who asked too many questions, who wanted to go to architecture school instead of staying close to home, like a good daughter should. My father, Walter, was quiet, kind, in the moments he was present, which weren't many. He worked construction most of his life, and I think some part of him understood my need to build things, even if he never said it out loud. He was the only one who came to my graduation. He stood in the back so my mother wouldn't see him leave the house. He died 6 years ago, heart attack, alone in his recliner, on a Tuesday. Dana found him. I got a text message, not a call. A text 3 days after the funeral had already happened. Dad passed. Funeral was Saturday. Didn't want to bother you. We know you're busy. I flew home anyway. I stood at his grave by myself in the rain while my mother and sister were 3 towns over at a lake house that used to belong to my grandmother, having what Dana later called on Facebook a celebration of his life. I paid off the remainder of his medical bills. Nobody thanked me. Nobody knew because I never told them. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because he was my father, and love doesn't always wait for people to earn it. After that, I stopped trying. I built my company instead. I built it into something enormous, something undeniable, and I told myself I didn't need them to see it. Then Forbes called, and 2 weeks later, so did my mother. We met at a restaurant in downtown Columbus, the kind with white tablecloths and a wine list longer than the menu. My mother wore a new dress. Dana was already at the table scrolling her phone, looking exactly like she had at 22, golden, effortless, untouched by consequence. "Marin!" Dana stood up and hugged me like we'd spoken last week instead of last decade. "You look incredible. Successful looks so good on you." "Thanks," I said, sitting down carefully. "The way you sit down in a chair you don't trust." My mother reached across the table and took my hand. Her rings dug into my knuckles. "We've missed you so much," she said, her eyes glossy in a way that might have been real, might have been performance. With her, I'd never learned how to tell the difference. Family is family, no matter what's happened. Blood doesn't just disappear. I almost laughed. Blood hadn't shown up to my father's funeral either, but I let it go. We ordered. We made small talk about my company, my new building downtown, the magazine cover. My mother asked questions she'd never asked before about revenue, about investors, about how the firm was structured. I answered carefully, watching her eyes light up at certain numbers and go flat at others. Then halfway through the entree, Dana set down her fork. "So actually," she said, glancing at our mother first, like she needed permission to continue, "there's kind of a reason we wanted to see you." There it was, the reason under the reunion. "My restaurant," Dana said, "the one on 5th Street, we're behind on the loan. Like, really behind. The bank's talking about foreclosure next month." My mother squeezed my hand tighter. "We were hoping, since you're doing so well now, maybe you could help your sister, just a loan. Family helps family." I looked at both of them. 2 women who hadn't called me in 4 years. who missed my father's funeral by choice, who now sat across a white tablecloth asking me to hand over money like the last 4 years had simply been a long commercial break. "How much?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Dana's eyes brightened. 240,000. I didn't answer right away. I picked up my water glass and drank, giving myself 3 seconds to decide who I wanted to be in this moment. "I'll think about it," I said. My mother's smile faltered for just a second, one flicker of something colder underneath the warmth, before she caught herself and smiled wider than before. "Of course, sweetheart. Take all the time you need." That night, driving back to my hotel, my phone buzzed. A text from Dana. "Thank you so much for considering it. You have no idea what this means to us. We're finally going to be a real family again." I read it twice. A real family again, as if we'd ever been one to begin with. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my assistant, Priya, and asked her to pull everything she could find on Dana's restaurant, the loan documents, the LLC filings, the bank records if we could get them legally. Something about the dinner had felt wrong in a way I couldn't yet name, and 16 years of reading contracts had taught me to trust that feeling. The documents came back 3 days later, and what I found wasn't just a failing restaurant. It was a pattern. Dana's restaurant wasn't just behind on one loan, it was drowning in 4, all taken against the same collateral. A piece of property listed as the Ashford Family Lake House, Route 9, Miller County. My grandmother's lake house, the house where they'd celebrated my father's funeral without me, the house I'd spent every childhood summer in before my grandmother passed when I was 26. The house I'd always believed, based on what my mother told me at the time, had been left entirely to Dana in my grandmother's will. "Your grandmother wanted Dana to have it," my mother had said back then. "She knew you were building your own life in the city. She thought Dana needed the stability more." I'd accepted that. I was hurt, but I accepted it, because grief makes you swallow things you shouldn't. But according to these county records, the lake house wasn't solely in Dana's name. It never had been. It was held in a family trust, and the original 2016 filing, the one drawn up right after my grandmother's death, listed 2 equal beneficiaries, Dana Ashford and me. My hands went cold reading it. I called the number listed for the trust's attorney of record, a small firm 2 hours outside Columbus. The woman who answered, an older attorney named Ruth Calloway, recognized my name the second I said it. "Marin Ashford," she said slowly. "I wondered if you'd ever call." I drove out to meet her the next morning. Her office smelled like old paper and coffee, file cabinets stacked floor to ceiling, the kind of place that still did things the honest, slow way. She slid a folder across the desk. "Your grandmother came to see me 8 months before she passed. She wanted to change her will. She was very clear about it." I opened the folder. Inside was a handwritten letter. My grandmother's looping cursive, unmistakable even after all these years. "Marin, if you're reading this, it means your mother finally told you the truth. Or you finally found it yourself. I always knew which one it would be. I left the lake house to you and your sister equally because I loved you both. But I want you to know something. I saw what your mother did to you your whole life. I saw how she made you carry weight that was never yours to carry, while she handed your sister everything wrapped in ribbon. I couldn't fix that while I was alive, but I could make sure that when I was gone, you'd have something that was truly, legally, undeniably yours. Don't let them take this from you too. I love you. I always saw you, Grandma Iris." I read it 3 times before I trusted my voice enough to speak. "How did they get it out of the trust?" I asked. Ruth's mouth thinned into a hard line. "Your mother filed as trustee. She told the court you had waived your interest voluntarily, that you were, and I'm quoting the filing, estranged and uninterested in the family property." There was a signature on the waiver. She turned a page and slid it toward me. It was my signature, except I had never signed it. "That's forged," I said quietly. "I suspected as much," Ruth said. "I flagged it to your mother's attorney at the time, but the filing went through before I could stop it. Your grandmother's original letter was placed in a sealed file, per her instructions to be released only if you personally came asking. She didn't want to hand you a war. She wanted to give you the truth and let you choose what to do with it. I sat there in that quiet office, holding a letter from a dead woman who had seen me more clearly than my own mother ever had, and I understood finally and completely what this reunion had actually been about. My mother hadn't found her love for me in a magazine article. She'd found a target. I didn't confront them right away. I've built too many things in my life to know that anger poured out fast just makes a mess. It doesn't make anything stand. If I wanted this to actually mean something, I needed to build it the way I built everything else, carefully, load-bearing wall by load-bearing wall. First, I had Ruth begin the legal process to challenge the forged waiver. Forgery has a statute, but Ohio law allows challenges once fraud is newly discovered, and discovery, Ruth assured me, had a very literal definition the day I'd walked into her office. Second, I looked into the 4 loans against the lake house. All of them had been taken out by Dana, using the property as collateral for the restaurant without my knowledge or signature, because as far as any bank was concerned, my mother's forged paperwork made her sole trustee with full authority. Third, and this was the part that took the most patience, I found out who held the largest of those 4 loans. A regional bank had already sold the debt to a private lending firm, the kind that buys distressed small business loans for pennies on the dollar and waits. I bought the loan, not personally, through a holding company under my firm's investment arm, one with a name that meant nothing to anyone in my family. $210,000 for a debt that was quietly, legally, about to become mine to decide what happened next with. I didn't do it out of cruelty. I told myself that then, and I still believe it now. I did it because I needed leverage in a family where the truth alone had never been enough to protect me. My grandmother had tried to give me protection once, and they'd erased her signature to take it back. I wasn't going to make that mistake twice. While the paperwork moved quietly through the system, I let my mother believe I was still deciding. "Have you thought more about helping Dana?" she asked over the phone one evening, her voice syrupy in a way I now recognized as calculated. "I have," I said. "I've thought about it a lot. And? I need a little more time. I want to understand the full financial picture before I commit to anything." "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you need." I could hear, underneath her patience, the sound of someone waiting to collect. The foreclosure notice on Dana's restaurant was scheduled for a Thursday. I made sure my ownership of the debt was finalized the Monday before. Then I did something I hadn't done in 4 years. I invited them to dinner. I chose the same restaurant we'd sat in weeks earlier, the white tablecloths, the long wine list. My mother arrived first, practically glowing, certain this was the dinner where I'd finally say yes. Dana came in behind her, looking thinner than before, dark circles under her eyes that even good lighting couldn't hide. "I have something for you both," I said once we'd ordered. My mother's hand fluttered to her chest. "Oh, Marin." I placed a folder on the table. Not the one from Ruth's office, a different one I'd built myself. "This is the payoff structure for the restaurant's outstanding debt," I said. "All 4 loans." Dana's eyes went wide. You're paying it off? All of it?" "I'm not paying it off," I said. "I bought it." The table went very quiet. "What do you mean you bought it?" my mother asked, her smile still frozen in place, not yet understanding what was happening. "I mean the largest of Dana's 4 loans, the one secured against the lake house, isn't owned by the bank anymore. It's owned by me. I bought the debt 3 days ago." My mother's hand slid off her chest and landed flat on the table. "Why would you do that?" Dana asked, her voice cracking. "Because I wanted to be the one holding it when I told you both what I found." I opened the second folder and slid Ruth's copy of the trust filing across the table. "Grandma Iris left the lake house to both of us, equally. You forged my signature on a waiver to remove me from the trust, Mom, so you could use my half of that property as collateral for Dana's loans without ever asking me." My mother's face went through 3 different expressions in the space of 5 seconds: shock, calculation, and finally, when she saw Ruth's letterhead clearly, something close to fear. "That's not Marin. There's an explanation." "There's always an explanation with you," I said, and I kept my voice steady because I refused to give her the satisfaction of watching me shake. There was an explanation for missing my graduation, an explanation for the funeral, an explanation for 4 years of silence. I'm tired of explanations, Mom. I want the truth, just once. Dana was crying now quietly into her napkin. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear, Marin, I didn't know about the waiver. Mom told me you signed off on your share years ago. I thought you didn't want it. I believed her, actually. Dana had always been more pawn than architect in our mother's plans. Golden, easy, and just useful enough to keep close. I know, I told her, and I meant it. That's why I'm not here to destroy you. My mother's eyes snapped up. Then what are you here for? I'm here to tell you what happens next, I said. The forgery filing is already in motion with Ruth Calloway. The trust will be corrected to reflect what Grandma Iris actually wanted to the lake house. Split equally between me and Dana, the way it should have been from the start. And the loan? My mother asked, her voice thin now, all the syrup burned off. I'm restructuring it, I said. Donna keeps the restaurant. She makes payments to me directly on terms she can actually survive, because unlike you, I'm not interested in watching her drown. But the lake house is no longer collateral for anything. It's mine and hers, protected, the way it was all supposed to be. And me? My mother asked. What happens to me in this little plan of yours? I looked at her for a long moment. 40 years of memory sat between us on that white tablecloth, every missed recital. Every time she'd introduced Dana first and me second, if at all. Every silence I'd mistaken for something I'd done wrong instead of something she'd chosen. Nothing happens to you, I said. You're not part of the trust anymore. Ruth's filing removes you as trustee due to the fraud. You don't get a say in the lake house, the loan, or anything else that's mine. I'm your mother. You were, I said. For a long time, you were just someone who happened to give birth to me. There's a difference. And I spent 30 years not understanding it. I understand it now. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor, drawing eyes from nearby tables. You ungrateful after everything you did? I finished for her, quiet, level. You're right. After everything you did, I still came when you called. I still gave you a chance. That's more than you ever gave me. She grabbed her purse and walked out without another word, her heels sharp against the floor. The sound of a woman who had never once had to face a consequence she couldn't outrun. Dana stayed. She wiped her face and looked at me across the table, and for the first time in either of our lives, it felt like we were finally sitting there as equals, two sisters who'd both been shaped by the same woman's hunger, just in different directions. I'm sorry, she said, for all of it, for the funeral, for not calling. I let her decide who I was allowed to love. I know, I said, so did I for a long time. The court finalized the correction to the trust 2 months later. My mother's attempt to fight it collapsed the moment Ruth produced the original letter, and a handwriting analyst confirmed the waiver signature wasn't mine. My mother didn't go to prison. Forgery cases like this rarely end that dramatically in real life, and I never wanted that. I only ever wanted the truth on paper, permanent and undeniable, the way you pour a foundation so nothing built on top of it can ever shift again. Dana kept the restaurant. It's smaller now, quieter, out of the debt that was crushing it, and she calls me sometimes not to ask for anything, but just to talk. We're not close, not the way sisters in movies are close, but we're honest with each other now, and honesty was something our family had never once offered me before. My mother and I don't speak. She's tried twice, both times with messages that started warm and turned cold within 3 sentences, when she realized I wasn't going to change my mind. I didn't respond to either one. Some doors don't need slamming shut. They just need to stay closed. I kept my half of the lake house. Last spring, I spent 3 weekends there alone, tearing out the water-damaged drywall in the sunroom my grandmother used to sit in every morning with her coffee, replacing it board by board with my own hands, the way I hadn't built anything for myself in years. I found her letter again the last night I was there, tucked into the folder Ruth had given me, and I read it once more by lamplight. The lake dark and still outside the window. I always saw you. I sat with that for a long time. Not with anger anymore, not even with grief, not really. Just with something quieter. The particular piece of a person who finally stopped waiting for people to see her, and instead let herself be seen by the one person who always had. My family remembered me the moment I became worth something to them. But I remembered myself long before that. And in the end, that was the only inheritance that ever really mattered.